My mom is a huge Harry Potter nut. She and my dad actually met in a Harry Potter IRC, like Discord but for old people. In the early aughts got married, had kids, and from day one decided to embarrass us for life by naming us after some Harry Potter and Star Wars characters. It's honestly been hell. I have a stupid name, and since we were little my parents have forced stuff like Harry Potter, Star Wars, Marvel movies, etc. down our throats. Everything is about dragons and magic and blah blah blah. I'm so sick of it. Every birthday, every holiday, everything is just organized around fandom. So just like every Christmas, the days leading up to Christmas we have to sit down every night and watch Harry Potter movies. I can usually get away with knitting or drawing on my iPad during this, but this year my mom was like, let's just have a technology and distraction-free night every night. I arranged to go over to my friend Missy's house instead for like 2 nights. Missy's family is normal and likes things a normal amount. My mom got really mad and started talking about how it's a family tradition and how I'm basically rejecting her, and went on her whole thing about how you wouldn't exist if it wasn't for Harry Potter. I finally had it and just yelled, I don't like Harry Potter. I don't like Star Wars. I couldn't help it. I started crying because I was just so frustrated, because everything always has to be about Harry Potter, this, Star Wars, that, and now that we're all older they started doing Game of Thrones. Everything is centered around some kind of movie or TV show or book series. Just once is I want my family to band around something that doesn't have to do with media or these nerdy things. We live in Utah where we have like 5 national parks, and even though I ask every year for my birthday, well, my sister called me saying that mom was angry and to just come home and to stop with the theatrics. I told her that I'm sick of having all this old nerd stuff crammed down my throat, and just once I want to have a normal time watching normal Christmas movies and not having to pause for lightsaber battles. I have a large family. Mostly aunts and female cousins aside from mom, stepmom, stepsister and grandmother. I don't know how to say this, but all those women I mentioned above are into teasing and joking. They've formed a unit, which I admit is kind of toxic. And they'd tease and roast every new woman that enters the family by marriage by setting up tests to see if they deserve to be part of the family, or roast their looks and styles to the point of breaking confidence and self-esteem down. Then after a few months of teasing they'd announce that they've finally welcomed them into the family. The newest member would join in on the teasing too, which is crazy, as my dad says. When I first introduced my then girlfriend, now wife, I made it clear that I didn't want any of the women in the unit to come at her or harass her, not even with a single word. They went behind my back and roasted her looks and job, and I discovered they've been doing it on Facebook. I had them apologize one by one after they gave the "we're just testing the water to see if she's capable to be part of the family" excuse. They didn't want to apologize, but once I said I wouldn't invite any of the unit unless they apologize, including my mom, everyone immediately apologized and brought gifts for my wife. My wedding was 2 weeks ago. There was talk about the women in the family wanting to pull a prank on my wife by wearing white and called it the ultimate test to see how my wife react. My brother warned me, so I announced that if any one of them showed up in white I'd have them kicked out, including mom. They said this wasn't true and they'd never do such thing. But they showed up to my wedding one by one wearing white dresses, and each and every one of them was told to leave after they tried giving excuses by either making scenes or getting the men involved. The senior women of the unit, who are mom and aunts, also showed up in white but refused to leave. I threatened to take harsher action and mom was pissed, telling me to step aside, but I didn't let her in. I had her leave while the men in the family were watching stunned. Dad was on my side and supported me a lot. I felt absolutely awful because my wedding was being interrupted by them making scenes. My wife was hurt beyond measure, but the women in the family were pissed. My cousin blasted me on social media later, saying I excluded all the women from the wedding because my wife was so insecure she couldn't handle another woman's presence at her wedding. I had an argument with them and mom berated me, saying it was supposed to be a prank, but I said they were taking it too far. Mom said I took it too far by kicking them out because they were trying to get reaction from my wife to see if she was one of those Bridzillas and were going to change soon as prank was over, but I ruined my own and entire wedding by reacting so aggressively. I stopped talking after she said I had to bring my wife and apologize. I haven't seen the lot of them in 2 weeks and they've excluded me from everything. I just want to explain that, this has been happening for years. The men in the family are split on this behavior. Some of them encourage it like my uncle and my cousin's husbands. One is now an ex, and some are against it like me and my dad and brother. B. The women claim that there's nothing hurtful in what they do because they claim they're just looking out for us men and that their goal, ultimately, is to make sure the women who enter the family are decent. C. My dad always ends up arguing with my mom and grandmother since they're the ones who started this whole thing with their behavior and attitude towards other women. D. And I'm not sure if I should mention this, but my male cousin who's a middle schooler said he'd make sure to leave the country before even meeting any woman because of this, and it made me chuckle. Also, the dresses they showed up in were simple white dresses, nothing over the top, but still were white dresses. I realized they went ahead with their plans even after I stated what I'd do in that case. My boyfriend's mom makes these amazing cookie bars. She makes them for the holidays and family gatherings, and people always request that she brings them. I asked for the recipe once and she laughed and said no, that it was hers and she doesn't give it out to anyone. I dropped it and never asked again. I started baking a lot during the pandemic. It's been fun for me in my downtime. I decided with my free time to try to recreate the cookie bars my boyfriend's mom makes. I pulled up recipes that sounded similar from online blogs and started baking and tweaking. It took about 5 recipes and batches, but I finally nailed it down. Her secret recipe ended up essentially being a cookie bar known as a Carmelita. I then decided to make it my own and improve it to my tastes. I used higher quality chocolate, made sauce with local homemade caramels, used flaky sea salt on top, vanilla bean paste instead of extract, added a pinch of this fantastic organic cinnamon I had on hand. The results were over the top delicious. My boyfriend declared they are better than his mom's, and he finished off half a pan in 2 days. He was FaceTiming with his mom Saturday and eating one. She asked what it was and he said, "One of your caramel bars." Joe found a recipe online but made it even better. She lost it. She started yelling about how awful I was for making her cookies and how I had no right. He told her that she was overreacting and quickly ended the call. She started blowing up my phone with nasty texts about what an asshole I am. I explained to her that I found the recipe I used online where it was very public. I had actually tweaked that to make it more my own. And that I wasn't ever planning on bringing them to an event she's at, so I did not see what the big deal was. She didn't care. She called me names and told me I was wrong for baking a recipe that I knew was similar to hers. She isn't speaking to me or her son. While I don't think my boyfriend should have made the comment about how I made it even better to his mom. Taking that out of the equation, she thinks I'm an asshole for even making them to begin with. I disagree, but from the texts from her and a couple other family members of hers, they think I crossed a line. I am 20 female, have recently moved out of my mother's house for college. I enrolled in scholarship. The other night, my mother wanted her, my younger brother, and I to have dinner together. It's been a while since we've spoken, and I'm afraid this might happen again. We were having a nice night, the dinner was delicious, and honestly, we were all having a good time. Eventually, we got onto the topic of how things were when I was younger. I made the comment on how her behavior when I was younger made me feel like I missed out on a lot of things as a child. She disagrees, and tells me that I'm being dramatic, and that my childhood was perfect. Quote, "I was lucky to have a mom who cared as much as she did. My mother gave birth to me when she was 18. My father walked out when I was young, due to a personal conflict between the two. So, she raised me on her own until I was 7. She met a guy, and they ended up having a kid together, my younger brother. He was a golden child to my mom. His father was only a temporary item, as he left as well, soon after. Although the father of my brother was still visible in his life, I didn't have anyone to look up to as a father figure. Eventually, my mom went through a phase of depression after they separated. She started to care less and less about her children, and more about her parties and men she wanted to sleep with. It ended up getting so bad that by the time I was 10, I was a full-time caretaker of my younger brother. With the exceptions of the weekends he was with his father. I started to cook, clean, do everyone's laundry, and take care of everything outside of the boundaries of my home. From ages 13 to 15, I began missing out and losing good friends because I wasn't able to participate in any activity related to anyone else. I didn't get a car or a phone until I was 18, and even then I wasn't allowed to leave my house. I graduated senior year with flying colors and ended up getting a scholarship to a really good college. I took this opportunity not only to focus on myself, but to also help my mother realize that I was not going to be around forever. When she found out I got the scholarship, she threw a fit and told me I wasn't allowed to leave my responsibilities here at home. I left a week after the conversation. I did make sure that my younger brother was safe with his second guardian at the time. My mother and I talked on some occasions but never really kept contact. We got together, and you know the story. She told me I am an asshole for saying that she never really took care of me or my younger brother. I told her that eventually, she will need to get help and stop victimizing herself. But I'm starting to feel guilty, and that maybe I was dramatic after all. I've officially decided that I no longer need my mother in my life at this point in time. I'm now going to only focus on myself and working towards a successful career in law. Of course, my mom won't take it well, but it won't really matter to her in the long run. Her children never really mattered to her. I'm going to stay in contact with my younger brother, though. I'm going to make sure that he doesn't possibly go through the same amount of trauma I did.